Hey, good evening, everybody. Ken at Tortoise Capital. It's Monday night, November 21st, 2022. This is Creativity 202, the U.S. session for lesson, I'm going to say 22, the impersonator. Uh, and we'll start with the check in. I'm doing really well here in Kansas. We're got our driveway all torn up. They're pouring some concrete. Um, we're in day 3 out of 4 of our uh, midterm oral comprehensive presentations from our military officers. I heard 3 briefings today, 2 of which were from international officers from the Middle East, who, if they had given that briefing in their home country, we might never see them again because of the moral courage they had in discussing what was going on. It was some just remarkable moral courage. And it's kind of it's humbling to be in the presence of guys that are that brave and who trust us that much. So I was today was a pretty emotional day in the classroom. Um, our U.S. officers were every bit as uh, courageous and compelling, and so it's really a privilege to be hanging out with those guys. And I would just let you know that no matter what our national policy is, that you can trust the integrity and professionalism of our officers. They are just I've never seen the Army in better shape in terms of that category of leaders. They're so much better than I ever was at that age. It's just astonishing. But everything's good here, and there's my brother. So let's continue our check in with Luke. How are we doing down under there, sir?
Yeah, we're going well here. So the last couple of weeks, if you remember, we had a lot of rain, a lot of floods. But in the last couple of days, we've had 70 mile per hour winds at home. So that because of all the floods, that has made a lot of the foundations of the trees quite poor. So there's trees going everywhere now. Um, this weekend, my mother is getting married. So she turns 80 next year. So that's something that I never thought I'd be going along to. So we're getting ready for that. So that's exciting. And so following this weekend, it's going to be the tail end of 3 funerals and 1 wedding. So I feel like the opposite of Hugh Grant, who's 3 weddings and a funeral. So it's been a bit full on the last 6 weeks. And yeah, just tidy up a bit of stuff at work before we go on a break for Christmas and go on a cruise in around New Zealand in January. So yeah, next 4 weeks is going to be full on, but otherwise all good here.
Awesome. Glenn Osborne, how are we doing, sir?
Just about over the flu. Still a few lingering coughs and sniffles here. It has turned bitter cold with some wind. I'm east of Buffalo, so no 4 feet of snow, but we did get dusting and this morning, and it's been quite bitter cold here. So trying to stay warm and healthy.
I was thinking about you when I saw that news report. I wasn't sure how far from Buffalo you were, but man, oh man,
250 miles. So
man, every time you just think you got stuff figured out, nature knocks and says, "Excuse me, hold my beer." Yeah. Dan, how are we doing?
Well, speaking of nature knocking, I don't have any matters of national significance or cruises, wonderful cruises, but I've been working on Libby Adams' 28-day course. That's pretty amazing. And just one thing after another. And then I'm all ready for this class. My wife asked me to come upstairs and help pick a bed up so that we could move a rug around under it. And eventually the thing falls on my toe. Oh. So nature strikes. But and you know, I have everything planned with a friend to take our dogs on an off-leash walk tomorrow morning in the nice cold air. So I'm hoping it'll recover. I took some ibuprofen and put some ice on it, and it feels much better. I hope it stays better.
Ouch. Not pleasant.
Well, it didn't break, so that's the good news.
But that hurts. Nothing hurts
Yeah,
like feet, man. Oh man.
yeah.
Nicole, how are we doing?
I am attempting to make guacamole, and I am not burning anything. So we are all safe from any fires happening here. But I can't attest to how good this guacamole is going to be. So
And
Okay.
my brother, how are you doing?
Uh, I'm okay. I'm doing all right. The cold is still lingering and kicking my butt a little bit. But I figured it's four days in now, so maybe one or 2 days left. I don't know. The snow has abated. Might have grass again by Thanksgiving. So that was the 5 inches on the ground to nothing in the span of a week is pretty interesting. Things are good.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and hit the tones and move us in. If this is anything like yesterday, buckle up because it was pretty amazing. So here we go. Lesson 22, The Impersonator. Luke.
So for this week, I focused a lot on the trader exercises, and I think it was really useful for me because the last couple of weeks I've noticed some changes in my trading and in the results. So I think a lot of it's been an assessment of where I am at the moment and trying to work out who are the players on the team, what their roles are, how do we assess them, what the qualities they need to bring to the performance, and who do I need to be more in tune with and not being so reliant on one or two actors. In terms of the players on the team, for me, it's the scout and the trader. That's phase one. It's a little bit like the trade's on. Someone's found the trade, they put the trade on. The next set of players is phase two, the risk manager and the fireman, and also the monkey. They're sort of playing defense. They actually get you out of trouble, and you need to recognize that the monkey is going to be manage that actor. Then phase three is offense. Risk manager's still there, but probably not as much focus on that actor as the sniper and the manager. And they're playing offense, as I said. And there was a particular day, and I was very frustrated on that day. And I don't normally get frustrated, but I was in the trade and I thought, I am going to get frustrated on this. And I acted it out. And I thought, this is what's going to happen. And I'm going to get frustrated. And if I share, can I share my screen, Ken? Can't see you guys now. I can't. Oh, there you go. Thumbs up to see the screen. Yeah, all good. So this first trade, that was fine. Second trade, tried to go short, covered. Third trade, tried to go short, cover. That's fine. This candle went really quick and I was fine to get on here. And I think Ken would say, you should have got on here and stop and reverse straight away. because it failed, stop and reverse, got this move. Now, I feel like the players on my team, the scout and the trader work really well. The risk manager is okay, so I mitigate the risk. The fireman's getting me out of not losing a full one execution risk. But what is not in my my forefront of mind is the sniper, because I can see a 1, 2, 3 exit and I don't get out and I wait for a 0.2. Is it the worst trade in the world? No. But through my analysis of the last 50 trades, I'm noticing my sniper is not getting activated nearly at all. And what I find is that I need to analyze why I'm not engaging the sniper as often as I should. I find that it's greed and fear of missing out on the big move. And I'll be honest, I don't like 1, 2, 3 moves. I don't like them. I don't know why. It's just something I don't particularly have them a lot in my repertoire, and it's something I definitely need to work on. Now this trade here, that's fine. Take a 0.2, reset, look for the next trade. Look for the next compound critical state, which is here. It consolidates, PSAR flip, RLXD, do the short, get down here, same thing again. It gets to the same level it got to before. It actually has some support. 1, 2, 3. That would have been a great exit, but I'll wait for it to come up to here. Again, it's not the worst trade in the world, and I still make a gain on the trade, but I think the analysis of where I engage different actors in the trade needs to be analysed a bit more, and I feel like I need to assess the end of the day to work out how I felt when I exited the trade, say here and here, and did I feel relief? Did I feel elation, greed, fear of missing out, any emotion, and then work out, did it actually work out the way I thought it was going to, or should I have just taken the 1, 2, 3 exit? What else? So going through the exercises, an action item I had was that I need to spend more time with understanding the sniper, understanding what makes him important on the team and what makes him critical to the success of the team. And in doing that, I'll assess my emotion and monitor and review what I thought would actually happen. I'm also noticing on the 5-minute Aussie that there are obviously resistance and support levels that I need to mark up during the day, during different times, to actually work out where a 1, 2, 3 could be happening to actually milk more of the trade out. And also Z3 exits for the sniper, getting a bit more of that piece there. What else is there? I think those are the main things that I got from today. I didn't have a chance to look at the poem, but I thought for me for this week, it was more important to look at the exercises for trading and go back and look at some of my trades to work out what I'm putting more emphasis on and what I should be focusing more time on, because I feel like I'm not doing it probably at all. So that's me for the week, I hope.
Dan.
I like the exercise of thinking of a problem I needed to solve in my work in progress and consciously trying to bring in mental coaches to help me with solving that problem, or perhaps channel actual coaches that I have in solving that problem, which is more what I did. It reminded me of something I read some years ago in Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, where, and I was just looking through the Kindle trying to find where he wrote about this, but I believe he had a imaginary mastermind in his mind where he would consult with great figures of history regularly. You know, he had kind of this mastermind going on, and he also recommended you have real masterminds with real people too. But same idea. I liked the way the impersonator exercise also said to not so much deep dive into the tactics of your advisors, but to try to get a good handle on why they operated the way they operated. What were their core beliefs, I suppose. So with that, I applied the mental exercise to my work in progress of doing these 3 or 4 2-hour trading sessions a week, which you may remember from a few weeks ago, I started doing them. And prior to that, I hadn't really thought of myself as wanting to day trade, regularly for years to come. But I realized I could do it. It didn't have to be all day. It could be for, specific times in the day. So I been trying that, and it's been going pretty well. And all along, I guess I have been, in a way, sort of impersonating or trying on different styles or different thought processes from the various coaches and advisors that I've had with the Van Tharp program. Maybe starting with Van. Well, I'll back up and say that if we thought of the success of this trading venture as a 3-legged stool, where the legs are psychology, your trading, your actual trading during the sessions, and then your preparation or your process for setting everything up so that you'd be successful, those being the 3 legs of it. I kind of brought in different folks mentally to help me with each of those. So on the psychology, we had Van Tharp himself, who believed that you could only trade your core beliefs and that the system had to fit you. So obviously I'm doing that in selecting the kind of systems I've used and the way I'm applying it. But also a very interesting belief that Van had was that you could also trade your inner guidance. It's also a mystical idea. He actually talked about some traders he knows who trade, largely, they cultivate their ability to trade by intuition. So it's almost a spiritual thing for them. Now, I don't know yet whether that will be actually how I make entries or exits, but certainly it's how I want to operate in life, to get more inner guidance from divine intelligence. So Van had some ideas about that, but I found Libby Adams's ideas about that very helpful, and that's a work in progress for me. But I think it's helping my psychology in just making all the decisions around, even do I trade today, or how, and different things. So that's the the psychology piece. And then for the process piece, Van again had the 12 tasks of trading. Now, I've had problems myself over the years with self-discipline, and I don't like to be micromanaged or to even micromanage myself. And yet, to what do you say? Prepare, plan, prepare, execute, and assess. You have to definitely follow a process, rinse and repeat. So I developed a process with a tagged spreadsheet. I've shown it to Glenn. It's got 50 items: pre-market, post-market, during market, close, open, tagged by system, and all that. And that was kind of all my own. But another piece that I added to it was an idea which actually came from the Reeds Trader folks, from Chuck and Mark, who said, you could keep a mental bank account where you pay yourself, for following your process. And so each of these 50 things, of which I might do, anything from 10 to 30, during the course of a day, has a monetary component that's multiplied by my daily rate, and that goes into my mental bank account. And I've got some wonderful plans for that money. And as my profits increase, so will my daily rate. So I got, tons of motivation to follow my process and indeed micromanage myself. So that's what I'm happily doing. So for the third leg of the stool, the actual trading itself, Ken here has been my mentor with not just the particular setups and patterns of the RLCO systems, but again, some of the core beliefs that underlie that, the underlying why we do things the way we do them. For example, having the risk, your position risk be sized generously, so that you don't have a lot of stress about taking your trade. The idea that trades don't necessarily have a directional bias. You have a statistical expectation, but you don't have a directional bias. And because of that, you can always stop and reverse and take another trade, and that you don't need to beat yourself up if a trade doesn't work, because that's kind of the roll of the dice. Your job is just to be alert to opportunities in either direction to execute your system and realize the expectancy of the system. So these things have been, all in all, working really well for me. I'm starting to see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. I've been trading one share, and after a few weeks, I've got 30 R multiples and a 2.5 system quality number for them. So that's workable. And I'll probably go to like $10 risk or something like that up from one share, just so I have to calculate, and a little more real still, and move on from there.
Glenn.
So the work problem that I've been trying to solve that potentially involves impersonating, trying to figure out what does the, shall we say, model student, how does a model student learn to trade, learn a trading system? you see people that pick up systems and just can go with it and make money with it right away from the get-go. And then other times, some of us struggle and play and struggle and struggle. So it's what is the mindset of that student who just takes the information and is able to apply it immediately and do so with seemingly with no hassles. And so in my mind's eye, I think I think I haven't read the book, but I keep thinking of beginner's mind, the beginner's mind, just simply taking the information, trusting it, and acting upon it. And that's where hold on. Okay. So being beginner's mind, and being able to simply follow a set of rules with no distractions. And that is sort of harkens back to my aha moment of last week of looking at the emotional state in the moment of action. And when there is no when there is no obstacle in the way of taking the action, then it can be taken freely and just happen. So I feel like ideal student takes the system, applies it, and where I think we tend to get hung up is we try and make it fit us and feel better about the system while we're treating it. Whereas the beginner's mind simply accepts the feelings that the system generates and doesn't try and influence them, just simply accepts them. And where we start tweaking the system, adjusting and figuring out our own rules and manipulating it around, we're no longer trading the system that we've been handed. We're creating our own system, which then we have to figure out how it works again. And so we're still left in all of this mumble-gumble confusion, rather than simply being the open slate to let the information flow through us and act. So I really, that's been my impersonation arrive at and coach and encourage someone to adopt the beginner's mind, the Zen beginner's mind, to simply follow the plan and accept the emotion that comes with it, rather than letting the emotion guide the action, which was my aha moment from last week.
Nicole?
My guacamole is not as good as I thought it would be. It's going to be the topic of this discussion. So I really like this poem. I don't know if any of you read it, but I thought the poem was probably the best part of this whole exercise. But then again, I'm a little different that way. So one of the things this asks us to do is play a game and then identify a work problem. And, you know, it's funny how I look at things now that I'm in a different country, and how I see things that I'm used to. I see things that my expectations are big and high, and like, should be this way, it should be this way. And when you take into effect the brain of someone who doesn't have the same education as you, or wasn't privy to that, and you you take into consideration, I wouldn't say effect, into consideration the level of poverty that is just subject to, it's okay, this is the way it is. And then the level of a massive wealth sitting right next to that poverty. And everyone seems to get along fine. And what I find most interesting is today I was sitting in a little salon that's actually a really nice little salon that's kind of in the middle of nowhere. Like, you would never think about it being anywhere like here. Like, it should be in town, but it's not. It's outside of town. And I looked at the people there, and everybody that was a client was an American or a Canadian. Everyone who was working there was, of Mexican descent. And in all of this, the one thing I think that has stood out to me, living in Mexico for now almost 2 years straight, and only being back in the US for a handful of days, less than 2 weeks, if I count up all the days. And seeing how people they adapt to situations in ways that I would never think of adapting. And one of the ways today, when I was reading this poem, Renaissance, and it's not Renaissance, it's Renaissance. Like, it's just kind of, I think that's how I pronounce it anyway. I was kind of laughing at, she's kind of playing on this how big the world is, but how small I can make it with my hands. And it reminded me of, there was a SNL skit. It was like, I'm going to pinch your head, and it was this little, I forgot which one it was. I'm not all up in the film stuff, but it reminded me of how, when we're able to play with our imagination and be in this impersonator, like, I'm sitting there getting my nails done, and I'm not in a third world country, I'm in a first world country, quote unquote, but I'm feeling like, okay, I'm in a third world country, right? Because it's not the same. Actually, I wasn't really thinking, like, feeling that, but that's kind of what people feel. And it was just an interesting vantage point of feeling like you're kind of an impersonator here, being an American, not speaking the language fluently, getting by. And this country has now made it their due diligence to basically service the needs of the Americans and the Canadians as they've come, and all the rest of them, as they come into town. And so, who is really the impersonator? People think it's really sexy. Oh, you live overseas, and it's not overseas. It's the same freaking continent, for God's sakes. You can take a car, you can drive over the border, and you can drive here. It's not that hard. And yet it seems like, people think that I'm like on another planet. Federal Express doesn't deem it necessary to, like, track their packages in Mexico for some reason. What? I think that's a lie, but there's just, it's just this feeling of, like, who is really the impersonator? The person sitting in the chair getting her nails done, or the person that's doing the nails, who is doing the job and has to think, has to actually progress into the conversation that they aren't fluent in and try to make the decision of the client sitting there based upon what the client has come in for the service for, so that the client is happy. And it just, it has nothing to do with training. It has all to do with just impersonating. And as I read through this, I was like, wow, do I feel like I'm an impersonator, or do I feel like I'm an active participant in this game called life? And sometimes I think I feel like I'm the impersonator, and this poem really brought it home to me, because I kept on thinking, like, I do that at night when I sit outside, and I have this beautiful patio, and I sit outside and I watch the stars, and I'm like, wow, that star is so big, and I'm up there like this. And it's so funny, like, oh, that's a big star. Oh, that's a smaller star. And then I can see the satellites. I mean, this is a perfect place to watch the stars, even in town, because we don't have a lot of light. So you can see everything. And it's quite beautiful. But yeah, I really don't have much to say about the trading part of it, because obviously I'm not trading, but it's interesting to see how we impersonate others, even as we go through life and we don't really realize what we're doing. So I felt like that today, like I was the impersonator, very much so. So aho on that. I don't know if that made any sense. Blame it on the guacamole.
Re-yim.
So, I took initially a attack similar to Luke, because I honestly couldn't think of. I can only trade the way that I trade. So it's hard for me to think of how somebody else. Well, not really hard, but maybe it's just hard for me to explain it. I see the monkey in two parts. The one that's screaming at me to get in the trades, because that's where the money is. That's what you have to do. Let's go. And then there's the fireman. I picture him with the leash on the monkey, saying, wait a minute, we got to wait for these signals. When the signals are there, then you can go and throw the money in I think of a big vending machine, and he pulls a vending machine, and the little, candy bar with the Cliff bar shows up. And now I have a Cliff bar. And he's going to hold on to it and run around and take bids on it, and who wants to buy it. At that point, when people are bidding on it, they they're sticking up their hands, kind of like that storage wars. Okay, we got this, and once it gets to a certain point, he says, okay, monkey, we got enough basic money bid, and he takes the candy bar from him and gives him a peanut, and he sits on his shoulder. Then he's just standing there going, okay, now I have the minimum amount. And I picture Ken as actually the fireman a lot. Just, okay, now we have the minimum amount. I just want this monkey off my back, and I want this candy bar out of my hand. So he gets it to that point, and he says, all right, now that's good. That's where my manager is a completely unfeeling, cold, strict, absolutely strict manager, because it's my trailing stop. Where I picture myself as the sniper for the exit, going, how long am I going to wait for that thing to go up and then come down? Because my goal is to try to predict the top of the apex of the shot, the top of the price that they're bidding on and holding the candy bar and all that all at once. And then trying to pick the spot, the perfect spot between the apex and where the fireman's just going to hand the candy bar away on the direction of the robotic manager. So that's the only cognitive load I really have, is trying to make the perfect shot, because it's going to go out like there's going to be, it's almost like shooting tandem skeet. You have a guy behind you that's going to take that shot right after you. So if you want to have an impact on the trade, you got to do it in this little window. Aim small, miss small. That's all you get. It's just that little bit, because right here is where he's going to shoot, and it's going to go off, and you won't have a shot anymore. And up here is potentially the high, but that thing could fly again. That's where I see all those impersonators and what their roles are. But the thing is, as I'm going through that, I thank each of those players as their role is fulfilled. Thank you, monkey. Thank you. Then he gets to go and rest. And the fireman, thank you, fireman. And then so Ken gets to go back, sitting down and doing what he's doing. And I that's how I reduce my cognitive load that way. The thing for me was I basically have grown up doing I don't care about direction, and that freaks so many people out. I just don't care which way it goes. I just want it to go a certain direction. Pick a direction and go a little ways so I can have enough data to take my damn trade. It's my darn trade, excuse me. That's all I want. Today, for a while, was horrible for me, because things just, everything I looked at was, it was almost going to make a trade. Oh, okay. And it just kept failing in that sideways quiet channel. It was driving me nuts. So I didn't do anything, which I just went back to doing other things that I had to do. What I have really found for me is touching a little bit on the beginner's mind. You made me think of my discussion with my third nephew, who will eventually carry on in our endeavors. I spoke with him yesterday, and he had the beginner's mind. He's a brilliant anti-hacker for corporate people, and he can work anywhere in the US. And I talked to him about what Ken and I were doing, and our roles, and we'll have to eventually move those on. So all three of the heir apparents have been notified of what the expectation may be of them in the future. And he said, well, why don't you show me what it is? And I literally showed him how, because he is very much like me, visually intuitive trader. And he literally picked up, he goes, oh, I said, and we hit upon the idea that the thing, and maybe this will help, and I didn't mean it to help Glenn, but maybe this will help Glenn in his coaching, is to say, well, he understood, he's not a master of statistics, but he understands them. And I said, well, you have to remember that this graphical representation that we have is simply a description of the statistics. It's not my wanting them to do this or that is immaterial. He goes, yeah, if the numbers aren't there, then the line won't move. I said, yeah. So when the line moves, it's not because of anything you wished for. He goes, yeah. So he goes, this is He goes, that's really simple. And I said, yeah. And I said, I think people need, I don't know, just a basic understand. They don't have to know everything about statistics, just understand that they work. And he's like, yeah, he goes, that this makes total sense to me. So with his beginner's mind, having never traded before, he was like, oh, well, that's, you do this and you do that. And I said, yeah, that's it. So, where I do find my last little bit here is, the monkey does come back into play a little bit later on in the day, is even after in the mornings that, you know, usually get a move. I don't, strong or weak, it doesn't matter. But I do find myself, my only bias I find out in the day is I almost root for the retracement. I am always looking for the biggest movers in the day, either side, up or down. And I say, well, you know, which one had the weakest signal to get there? Because that's going to probably be the one that retraces back to the VWAP or halfway. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but that's kind of where the monkey kind of says, right about 2 o'clock, he's like knocking on my door saying, hey, we got to get back in there and look at which ones are going to fall from their lofty perch, or which ones are going to dig their way out of the hole they made for themselves. So let's get back on it. So about 2 o'clock is when I get a little bit fidgety. I think that's the big key takeaways are, I've relieved a ton of cognitive and emotional load by the trailing stop, because sometimes I've just seen it. Oh, I'm out of the trade, which is why I think the 2-hour battle drill works so well for me. Is, oh, well, oh, I just took another position. I didn't have to think about it at all. It was just, you know, I trusted the stats. And there might be some gold there for other folks. You know, caveat emptor. Aho.
Yeah. You know, we spent probably 2 hours yesterday talking about that poem, which I'm trying to remember how that poem came to my attention. I don't know, but it fit pretty nicely into the whole idea of consciously adopting an alternate point of view to change the shape of your reality and interpret things, and try this, that head pinching and reaching to the sky and imagining these different points of view and everything. And the discussions of them were pretty amazing. And I would, when time permits, I'd get in there and listen to Ernie's discussion of his original experiences with the poet Edna St. Vincent Millay. Uh, you know, and his introduction to the poetry of Sylvia Plath. And if I'm being honest, Ernie was not the first person I thought of for being moved by the poetry of those two ladies from the early 20th century. But it was really kind of remarkable. And so poetry has a way to kind of shift us out of our normal condition. You know, one of the things I just have a little uncertainty with is the idea of the inner guidance. Just for Dan, I just got to say that. To me, I am 100% about calibration and systems under control with a system specification. That doesn't mean I'm going to follow it, but I want to be darn sure that I know what it is that I'm varying from. And I just worry about calibrating an inner guide. How does that inner guidance change its mind? where is its data source? Did it have a cheese sandwich and is feeling differently than, you know what I mean? So those are things that I am concerned about. That's a limitation and a strength, I think, of my particular point of view, which is just one of them, one of the points of view that can be adopted. My true story for this week is just I'm watching a bunch of guys in their 10th year of service, approximately, who are learning to make a transition from the last 10 years of their life where they've been combat veterans, commanders of soldiers in combat, have undergone crystallizing experiences. And in a year, we're trying to convert them into organizational leaders where all of the things that made them successful in the past are not the things that are going to make them successful in the future, except some of them. The foundations, the values, some of the instincts that they've developed are going to always be important, but not all of them. They're coming from a world in which they had to be certain about what they were briefing to their commander about their local situation, which came across in a lot of their presentations, their oral defensive thesis to the board members. And the ones who showed that they were ready for that next level were the guys who were able to kind of reverse the tables a little bit, to accept their own preparedness in that domain, but could also imagine what our next questions were going to be, and then had some prepared remarks or could start steering it towards what they expected the questions to be if we accepted their presentation. It's like, okay, got it, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then my job really in this little 90-minute session was to kind of move them to the boundary of their confident knowledge as quickly as I could to verify their due diligence, but then immediately to get them beyond that into that area outside the fence line where it's a fog of war, movement to contact, where your values matter and you're trying to gather information with every step without falling off a cliff. So, like, don't test the depth of the water with both feet, that kind of deal. But where if you don't move, it's certain doom. So there's a forcing function in there where some action is required. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, and you don't know ahead of time with certainty which ones are going to be which. So you're constantly trying to be well prepared and less planned, if I can say it that way. So it means you got to trust your values and your snap judgment, but also walk in a way that allows you to be balanced and make contact with the enemy with the minimum force possible. Maximum security, minimum investigating tip of the probe as you explore. And so you're always kind of in that state where a little bit of a bump and you're ready to add a second position and go, and it could really scale because that's the one. Or it's the one that said, no, he tried it, nope, stop and get out, and be ruthless about that. So it was interesting to be thinking about this week's lesson for us, which was about adopting different points of view and trying on different roles in an ethical way. Can I set aside my temporary person or my permanent person and adopt a temporary role for the needs of the moment? And how quickly can I change roles? And how do I maintain stage direction and chief of staff and when to use which one? That was our discussion with Sonal yesterday. That was pretty interesting, I thought, when she was trying to figure out what it meant to trade like her, when what she was trying to do was trade like different traders at different points. So what was trading like Sonal supposed to mean? Sort of like a chief of staff, and she's trading styles, if you will. That's what her style is to trade this style for that style when it's appropriate, and the quick change artist, kind of the chameleon, if I can say it that way. I would say with Luke, my sense is that you were getting a little stale. Take a look at the size of the acceptable loss that you took on those partial losses, and compare that to the size of what you were given back with the slow X's when you were in the money, and you're going to see that you were given back far more on a winning trade than on the losing trade. So I would say take a look at the size of what you would consider to be an acceptable commitment to staying in the trade when you hadn't made money. Take half of that. When you take half of that yellow box and map it over to those 2 1 2 3 exits, you're going to see that's a 1 2 3 exit. And you're going to see that that connects pretty strongly to preserving an average win. I think that's the one. I think that's the thing that's missing on your chart. You got to show where. Don't let an above average win become a below average win. In the same way that you don't let a no lose plus dinner for two ever go to negative. It's the same sort of ruthless risk management that you just got to adopt. And whether that means you need a new symbol or just try that investigation on or figure out how to normalize it, then that's what I would say. That's what I think is crucial in there. And Glenn, I was thinking about you today when I was remembering what we said yesterday. One of my Zen moments yesterday was the idea of considering the entry to the trade in the same way you consider onboarding a new worker in a career path where you want them for 20 years. And so you want to make sure they get onboarded correctly. And so what are the things that you set them up for? What are the minimum viable pieces of knowledge they have to have? What are the mission essential things? And I think that's kind of what the trade management early on is. But it's also connected to describing their beginner's mind. We did an exercise this summer with the soccer players who were going to help me coach, and I had them write up the answer to these two questions, which I'd invite you to think about. If you're a player and you're hiring a coach to help you achieve your soccer goals, what are the qualities you're looking for in a coach? As a player who really wants to succeed, what are the qualities you're going to hire for in your coach? And then I ask them to think, now, as a coach, what are the qualities you're looking for in a player that you want on your team? And it turned out that my junior high school and high school players came up with a pretty darn good list of what it means to be a good player for a coach and to be a good coach for a players, as sort of almost a philosophy of the player coach. And so it seems to me that exercise is a good one for you to think about. What's that beginner's mind? What are the qualities that you want that beginner's mind to have? Not just how to cultivate it, but how do you know when they have it? You know, the kid says, "I think I got beginner's mind." Well, how do you know? Well, here's the tell. And then there's something at the end of beginner's mind, but before expertise. It's that Josh Kaufman's, that learning the first 20 hours. I think we talked about that last week too. But that first step into expertise is when you know enough to be able to start self-regulating against a standard. That you can actually take on your own self-coaching and say, hey, I just noticed what I did and I compared it to here's how I'm supposed to receive the ball. I didn't do that. Or I did do that, but it bounced too far or whatever. So that's what distinguishes that first step out of naivete is the ability to self-regulate. And then you practice that until it becomes so automatic that you're back into beginner's mind and you're trusting your feet. I would argue that the traders in beginner's mind, when they've learned to trust their rules automatically for good reason, the things that they're trying to internalize. So those are kind of my thoughts of where we are. So aho and all that. I'm going to hit the tones, and then I'm going to invite you to think about the word that comes to mind as I hit the gong, and then we'll go around the horn. So we'll do one set of gongs to close me out and to have you think. So here we go. All right, let's listen for our word. Glenn, what did you hear? What's your word for going forward?
Clear.
Dan.
Aha.
Nicole.
Death.
William.
Muster.
Mustard.
Mustard.
That's
Not mustard.
Colonel Mustard in the library.
Yeah.
Luke.
Recalibrate.
Mine was persona. All right, that's I'm gonna hit the tones and move us into coffee talk. We got some time to work tonight. And they're off.
Something struck me tonight about this conversation, even though it wasn't like 2 hours and really poignant and all that, but it was that I think in all of this, the one thing that I have taken away from this, as well as other things that I've been working on a lot. In fact, since I've been with this group in April, I went to that meditation conference not soon after I started with you guys. And one of the things that I've been noticing in myself, as well as just noticing how I notice, is the awareness. And Ken just said something, I want the system. I want to make sure it's measurable and specific so that I know I have something to go by. And I said in the very beginning when we started this that, I'm not one to like follow all the rules and have that specificity in my life, because it brings around a lot of anxiety for me that I have to measure up to that level. And like, I feel like, oh no, I'll never make it, or I'm not good enough, or all these things go through my head. And the other night, I don't know if you guys have been through this. Probably it gets a little woo woo up there, but I was noticing myself watching myself, and I've become like more aware. And one of the things that I've learned through this group and through watching Ken, and the way that I watch others who listen, is that silence is so much more deafening as a answer than anything else. And it always makes me uncomfortable when somebody's silent with me, because I know that, like, oh my God, the chatter in my head is like going off. And the more silent they are, the more chatter. And it's noticeable in me when I have now been able to be silent. I'm now the silent one, in the conversation. And I notice how others are reacting to me. And I notice me noticing myself in that. And so, Ken is like, I need that. I can't listen to that. How does that other one have, like, if he doesn't have a cheese sandwich, like, how does he know, how does he know if he hasn't had his coffee yet, And it's kind of funny because there were a few different things happening this week, but one of them was super specific. And I just noticed myself noticing myself. And now when Ken says the player's aware he didn't catch the ball, but it's being aware before the awareness actually is happening. And that's what I've been really working on in myself, is like and I said death tonight as my word, because it's the death of this old person that has limited the ability to see myself in the conversation as I want to be, as I admire the person to be. So this week's impersonator was more of me learning, and it's kind of apropos because I didn't even know this was the thing until today. And I'm like, oh my God, this has been happening all week. But I've been literally like working through how would this person who I admire do this. So it's just something that, I noticed with all of us, like we move towards being aware of what we're doing. Luke being aware of his trade in the 1-2-3, and when the PCR flips, did I take it at the right time? Or the sniper, when did I measure that arc? And I know these terms because I did trade, and so it's just interesting to hear it from all of you.
Sorry.
I wanted to comment on what a few of us were talking about in different ways, the topic of inner guidance. And it was interesting, Ken. I think you spoke twice or at two different times when you spoke. At one point, you said you liked everything to be very systematic and calibrated. But then when you were talking about the officers and how they had to be able to make decisions in a short time, um, they had to have both the ability to think fast and the ability to think slow. So they have, all those systems and all that calibration, but they also have their values and their alignment with their purpose and their kind of mental heuristics that they follow, and the ability to kind of make that all come together like it does when you make a good trade, I think is something coming from your inner guidance as well as from the reasoning capability of your conscious mind.
Oh, that's absolutely true. I mean, there's a lot of similarities. If we did the Venn diagram of the combat leader's mindset and the trader's mindset, the Venn diagram is a lot of overlap, but there's a certain set of areas that are not the same. Like the military officer is put into that position and you have to do something. The trader doesn't have to take every trade. So there's a little extra bit of, you can take on what missions you want. So there's some extra freedom, which adds certain stresses that the military officer doesn't always have. Now, sometimes you do. Like, you got to decide if you're going to venture into that darkness. There's other times when that's your mission, you got to go. And so there's a lot of similarity, but there's also, what I'm essentially training them for is how to know when they must trust their inner guidance. And you don't want to have to do that too often. Now, some guys love that. And that's all they want to do, because when you're right, the endorphins of that can become addictive. And you have to actually be on guard against that mindset that is the thrill seeking. That is a really dangerous condition. So I pay a lot of attention to that kind of that fine line between art and science and intuition and judgment, and part of me just says, look, I want to trade in the most boring way possible when I have such a statistical advantage that I'm just the bank, I'm the house, and I'm just collecting rent. If I'm being honest, that's what I want, and what I'm trying to teach students and whatnot, because I think there are lots of opportunities to do just that, to be a rent collector. And I am uninterested in pushing the boundaries of how close can I get to the edge of disaster and still maintain the biggest. Not me, because I know what the lure of that is. I know what that feels like, and I'm trying to not be that guy, like old bold mountain climbers. I hope.
Well, it's the another shorthand for it is kind of unconscious competence, I guess. You have to have the systems and the calibration there before you can do it fast,
Yep.
unconsciously almost. And also, I think as a trader, we have to integrate trading with our lives. Uh, we're 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 building systems, we're trading systems, we're living our lives, we're learning things. If you have a complex life, you have to make many choices about how you prioritize things, and sometimes the inner guidance is just directing you, hey, this is what you should emphasize right now, or this is what you should emphasize long term. It's not just about, whether you make an entry. It's also, kind of the decisions around your whole trading life and your systems.
Yep. Well, there's a moment in the book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which influenced me a lot when I was a kid. And it's the story of a guy who was a brilliant philosopher, but who, for various reasons, suffered a mental breakdown in the middle of trying to explore what Socrates and Plato and Aristotle meant. And he had come to some interesting philosophical perspectives about the pre-conscious judgment that would connect with intuition. Along the way to coming to those conclusions, he ended up ruining his life and his family's life, and needed electroshock therapy. And when he came out of all that, he became like a technical writer and a motorcycle mechanic. And so the second half, most of that book is about him rediscovering that aspect of himself and trying to integrate it into his life, while he's also traveling with his son, who misses his original father and considers this current father to be kind of a fraud, and he's suffering some of that anxiety that he's disconnected with who he thinks his father is. Well, at the end of this journey, when it comes to a reintegration, he kind of reconciles with himself. And what was a profound moment for me in that book was when he says his former personhood, who he called Phaedrus, who's one of the Greek characters in Plato's philosophical discourse, is called the Phaedrus. He says Phaedrus, which is how he thought of himself, was trying to come to fundamental understandings about the nature of the entire universe. I'm just trying to fix motorcycles, and I think what I have is just as important to say as anything he said, which to me was a respectful way to treat his previous life, but also his current life, which he had constructed from the bottoms up, and was a very inward directed personal relationship with the universe in and of itself. And so I've sort of always thought about that, and as I think about the pursuit of the pure and the the totality of everything. Hey, I'm just trying to trade here. I just want to make my bank every day, manage my risk, and be able to set that aside and live a fulfilling life in other dimensions where I seek fulfillment. I'm just trying to trade. So it's in one sense, it's integrating trading into your life in a way that you can accommodate and live a full life without it necessarily dominating every single thing that you do. So it's finding that harmonious spirit of craft work. A butcher is always a butcher, but he's not always butchering with his hands. He's, you know what I mean? So that's why that was a profound book for me, because it kind of put in that pursuit of truth, but also sort of the realistic sense of what we are trying to achieve as a person in life. Over. Aho.
I think one of the turning points in my own trading was, the I know this stuff works. And getting to the point where, and it is the psychological no lose plus dinner for two. The minimum acceptable win. I find I have a bigger letdown when I let myself give back between 0.7 and 1. That's where I feel my worst feeling of any trade. Like half an hour or less on the exit, I'm okay with. But if I'm in the 0.7 to 1, I just I feel like I failed, and I didn't fail. I will never fail because my absolute worst exit is 1, which is the hard. That is, that's rule. Like rule 1 is put on the trade. Rule 2 is do not accept less than, do not accept more than 1. I immediately put in that trailing stop at 1. So it is impossible to lose more than 1, because once that moves out, you will never lose more than 1R. So that's like rule 1, and then 1A, get in, then plan to get out, then manage the rest of the trade, worry about putting another thing on, or how much is it moving. And when you do that, again, I think getting to the point where I got to be honest, Dan, I don't know that I have 50 things that I think about before trading. When you said you had a list of 50 checks, I don't. And that just makes us two completely different traders. I don't know if you meant like 50 things before you traded, or you tried to get 50 things in during a trade or a trade week or something. I don't.
No, that's the totality of all my trading and investing systems that I use.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, long
Because
term.
I was sitting there going, you have a checklist of 50 things you go through. I was like,
Yeah,
oh my
yeah,
God.
it's across prepare, plan, prepare, assess, and execute for all systems, and
Okay.
there are too many at the moment, but it could be simplified, but
Okay. No, that
yeah,
wasn't a critique. I was just
yeah.
trying to illustrate the
No,
difference between the two of us.
I don't want to confuse people, so I had to
I
had to comment.
I would, yeah. I like the other day when the one guy said, you're inspiring to me. He wrote, you were inspiring to me when you had 10 losses in a row and it didn't stop you and you kept going. And I literally read that email and I went, I had 10 losses in a row. Oh my God. And then I went back and watched, because I didn't watch that night, and Ken pointed it out. I didn't even notice. That's how, that's how little the 0.2 and the 0.3 losses should affect you. Just, well, it's just statistics. It just, the market. I've shifted the blame to the market. If the trade didn't work, it just didn't give it to me. That's all. It's nothing I did. But I do go back and review all those trades and say, did I do everything I could possibly do in my rule set? Yes. All right. Well, then it wasn't me. It was the market simply didn't follow through. You're going to be mad about, am I going to be mad at me for that? No. So I don't know. I don't know why I felt the need to say that.
Yeah, the market needs to fix itself.
Yeah. I did what I was supposed to do. Hello. I don't know. Anyway. Apple.
Well, I have us about at 8:20, 8:25 here, so I'm gonna gently check out, and
Yep.
just always good stuff. The totality of this core, and tonight, last night, all of the lessons of the last month have just been, to me, really off the chart. With the I feel like the compound return on investment is really, because I mean, I saw this week's lessons in all the things that I've been doing during the those midterm briefings that the officers have been doing with me as as they're taking on new roles in the Army. It's just astonishing to me. So I'm going to check out and say, well done again this week. See you soon.
And I'm marking up 2 charts for tonight. I'll get them done as fast as I can.
Yep.
Okay. Good night. We're seeing a bit.
Cheers, fellas.
Cheers.